Hello, starseeds, and welcome to this episode of Astrology Chats, where we're going to talk all about love astrology. As you may or may not know, I have conducted previous astrology case studies regarding relationship, aka SYNASTRY astrology, featuring Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, as well as JFK and Marilyn Monroe. I will ensure to have those links in the description below so you can check those out. While you can leverage a synastry reading for love astrology or twin flame astrology can go a little deeper than just a relationship reading, as it should. A good way to illustrate the difference is this. Consider that I run a synastry reading for you and your potential crush. Yes, I can do that. However, I cannot run a composite chart to fully understand the vibration of this connection. Now, what is a composite chart reading? I'm going to get into that in the presentation. After all, the relationship has not yet begun, so I cannot run this composite chart reading because the composite chart reading includes details such as the time and date of the love relationship itself. So when did this relationship actually begin, as well as milestone dates such as your wedding anniversary. It's like doing a natal chart reading for your relationship. And so, to further demonstrate love astrology, we are going to do a deep dive of the king himself, Elvis, and his lady love, Priscilla Presley. Regulus, our lionheart king star, is now conjunct with the sun, and so those king vibes are in full force right now. As well, my dad really loved Elvis. And we have recently passed the 45-year anniversary of his passing. What a way to honor this true power couple from the golden age of music. I hope I have hyped up this presentation enough for you guys, so let's get into it. Okay, starseeds, welcome to my love astrology presentation featuring Elvis and Priscilla Presley. I have to be honest, this was inspired by a movie that myself and Kevin just watched about Elvis. I forget who the young man was, who was the actor who portrayed Elvis, Austin something, but he did a good job. I think he got the whole vibe of what was going on with Elvis. And so that also inspired the fact that he was in this very spicy relationship with Priscilla Presley for quite a while. Even though it did end in a divorce, it ended amicably. And they were a huge power couple. One of those couples that you kind of thought of as like everyone had eyes on in the glitz and glamour of the Hollywood music era. I'm really excited to take a look at this beautiful couple from a golden era of music as a way to demonstrate love astrology, of course, right? A learning moment. Okay, so before we get into the presentation itself, just so that we can guide our thoughts, we're going to go into a quick agenda. First, starting with what is love astrology, followed by Elvis's birth chart, and then Priscilla's birth chart, followed by a synastry reading, and then a composite reading. So it'll be a good way to see the difference between a synastry and a composite chart reading when it comes to astrology. What is love astrology? There are two types of charts you can do when it comes to love astrology, and I think it's probably a good idea to do both when it comes to lovers. There are synastry and there are composite charts. It addresses love compatibility. A synastry reading studies the comparison between the planets in their individual birth charts. It shows the impact that two individuals have on each other. Whereas composite charts attempt to harness more the energies and the destiny of a relationship. It looks at mathematical midpoints between each person's birth chart. Astrologers use those midpoints to cast an entirely new chart. So, as I mentioned before, if you think about important dates such as when this particular chart was born, as well as in each of the individual's charts, looking at things like their north node and what particular planetary rulers are ruling those charts, those are more involved in a composite chart reading as a whole, as the whole vibration of that entire relationship. Okay, we're going to get into the good stuff now, as in Elvis's birth chart. So Elvis was born on January 8th, 1935. His birth time was 4:35 a.m. sun up. Location of birth, I don't know how you pronounce this, Tupelo, Mississippi. Elvis was a Capricorn with his moon in Pisces. His Mercury and Venus are both in Capricorn. He's got Mars in Libra, as well as Jupiter in Scorpio. Saturn is in Aquarius. That's actually similar to Johnny Depp. Uranus is in Aries. Neptune is in Virgo retrograde. Pluto is in Cancer retrograde. And the moon's north node is in Aquarius. So that speaks to the head of the dragon, his fatalistic quality of being a figure, an icon to so many people. His ascendant is in Sagittarius and his midheaven is in Virgo. Okay, as you can see here, this is Elvis's birth chart. You can see that there's a lot of activity going on around in Capricorn. His sun is there, as well as Mercury, and his north node right there in Aquarius. So as you can see, there's a lot going on in that cusp between Capricorn and Aquarius. What does this mean? I'm not going to get into too much detail about it, but we can look at certain aspects. When I do astrology chart readings for people and I show them that wheel with all of the placements and all of the planets and all of the glyphs, as well as this major aspect grid, it is super overwhelming. So what I like to do is pull together some major aspects, which you can kind of see here on the grid to the right. But you can see the major aspects based on this black square that is surrounding the glyph. You have like certain squares that tend to scare people, but I don't think any aspect should scare anybody. You should be aware of what these are. It's all part of understanding your shadow and really getting a hold of the different storylines that are available to your archetype and your incarnation here, right? So if you look at Elvis here, he's got a sextile with his sun and Jupiter. Let's see here, another one to kind of look at. His port of fortune is in Libra. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm not going to go into too much detail when it comes to, I guess, the deep dives of major aspects. I'm going to instead go into these major aspects when it comes to SYNASTRY, when it comes to Priscilla's chart and Elvis's together. But I want to take a look at some other things when it comes to looking at your starseed astrology blueprint in the chart or the graph to the right. You can see that you have cardinal, fixed, mutable at the top. I did a recent presentation in regards to fixed signs most of all, but they are modalities when it comes to different star signs and how they function in the grand alchemy of things. You can check out that presentation for a bit more detail on that. But when it comes to Elvis, he is primarily a cardinal modality, as well as he looks to have an equal spread between earth and air element alignment, let's say. And fire, he's got 3 luminaries, and water, he's got 3 luminaries. But he's primarily at equal earth and air element with cardinal dominant in his chart. We're going to go into Miss Priscilla Presley's natal astrology chart. She was born on May 24th, 1945. Her birth time was 10:40 p.m. Location of birth, Brooklyn, New York. Her sun was in Gemini, so she's a Gemini girl. Her moon was in Scorpio. Her Mercury was in Taurus. Venus in Aries. Jupiter in Virgo. Saturn in Cancer. Uranus in Gemini. Neptune in a Libra retrograde, as well as Pluto in Leo. The North Node is in Cancer, so very much interesting there in terms of her fate in this lifetime being Cancerian and moon home related. The ascendant is Capricorn, and the midheaven is in Scorpio. Okay, now we have Priscilla's birth chart, as you can see. So, as mentioned before, yes, it is a little overwhelming when you look at the whole wheel, but what you can see here at first glance is that there's a lot of activity on one side of the wheel, and you can see that her port of fortune right here is actually in Cancer, where her North Node is. So that's something interesting to note. As well as her sun is in Gemini right here. There looks to be a hard aspect, I believe that's with Uranus in Libra. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like in terms of the aspects. Okay, now these are Priscilla's major aspect, as you can see in the graph to the right or left. You can see here that she has a Sun trine Neptune. I have the similar one. It's great. I like it. I like it as an aspect to work with, because Neptune is the king of the dream world of glamour and illusion, and there are sometimes, of course, challenging aspects when it comes to Neptune, but Neptune being the higher octave of Venus, being trine the sun, means that she appreciates beauty and art and aesthetic dreamlike things, and I think that is actually probably why she loves Elvis so much. As well, you can see here that she's got quite a few trines that are major aspects. The next one being that her North Node in Cancer is trine her moon, which is in Scorpio. So that's actually something very positive, but we will actually not necessarily do a deep dive into that. It's more about how these aspects interplay with Elvis's charts and aspects. But before we get into that, we can take a look here in the graph to the right, where you can see the spread of modality between cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs. You know, you can see here that she's got a lot in cardinal, just like Elvis. Not as much in fixed, mutable, kind of. And then when we look at the elemental breakdown, she's a water girl. So her element is water. Water is associated, of course, with emotions. With her trine here with Neptune, that actually works out quite well, I think, with how she's expressing herself in her day-to-day. Now we're going to take a look at a synastry reading between Elvis and Priscilla. So Priscilla's strongest quality is cardinal, and Elvis's strongest quality is also cardinal. So this actually works really well together. It is something that foretells the idea of being a power couple, and this is actually something that marries together quite nicely, because this balances each other out when it comes to elemental qualities. And when you think about things like warrior goddess coaching, like what I offer, it's good to know about your elemental quality within yourself, so that you can see where you need to find balance within relationships, as well as if it's something that in your love astrology looks to be something that you need, or rather it completes the storyline in terms of water being very receptive, very emotional, and earth being very steadfast. When they both lean into what they want organically, they get along really well. Okay, now here is the very complex looking synastry reading. And so, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, a synastry reading is the natal chart of one partner and the natal chart of another partner, and looking at those charts together on top of each other. It's not casting a new chart like what a composite reading is. We will get to that. But for now, looking at a synastry reading, you can see here where partner A, which is Elvis, he's in blue, so he's in the inner ring, and he's all the blue lines. And then partner B, that is Priscilla, and so she's in orange, and she's all of the orange glyphs on the outside of the wheel. And so at first glance, you can kind of see where the houses and kind of the domains of each of the planets, where there's interplays and aspects happening. So if you were to take a look right now, just looking at the chart, you could see here, let's look at the sun, for example. Elvis's sun right here, where he had a lot of activity going on that cusp between Capricorn and Aquarius. What does Priscilla have going on here? She's got her south node going on here in actually Capricorn. So they kind of complete each other in this lifetime. There's some faded qualities if we bounce off of that elemental quality of them both being cardinal signs, both being go-getters, but coming at it from a different perspective. Earth is very much, you want to think of, even though Earth in Virgo, for example, we're coming up to a Virgo new moon. Virgo is an Earth sign, but it's not fixed. But I do always think of anything Earth sign feeling. If you think of Capricorns, Tauruses, and Virgos, there's this definite stable fixed quality about them, even though they're not necessarily strictly fixed per se. So bringing that back to where we're seeing the interplay of storylines between Elvis's and Priscilla's chart, you want to look at where there's activity between the two charts and where they're telling a story with each other. So now, some major aspects that I pulled together based on the chart that we just looked at. First being the sun, which in Elvis's chart is in Capricorn, is trine Mercury, which in Priscilla's chart is in Taurus. So there is a trine between Mercury and the sun, and that's between Capricorn and Taurus. But this creates an atmosphere of understanding and mutual interest in the relationship. The sun person, so that's Elvis, can share and express their ideas, and the Mercury person is then able to put those into words. They probably had long, deep conversations about everything in the world and the universe, and they really got each other on a level without having to speak, but Priscilla was probably really good at articulating whatever Elvis was feeling. Next, in terms of aspects that we're going to look at, is a little bit more of a challenging aspect. So Mars in Libra opposite Mars. So this is a difficult aspect because this is where egos of both partners can play tug of war with each other as they try to accomplish their own personal goals. So the goals of each other can kind of come into conflict with each other, where it comes to trying to accomplish something. So Priscilla may have at some point in time felt lost in the relationship, where she felt like her own ego or her own drive forward, her own sexual needs were probably not being met. Well, Elvis's Mars is in Libra. Miss Priscilla's Mars is in Aries, and so Mars is at home in Aries. That's a very fiery aspect for her to have, and she would not like the fact that Elvis was going out sharing his aspect virility all around, and Libra is all about pleasing everybody. So there's definitely something there, and there's an inability for Mars and Libra. There's a difficulty in making decisions quickly because it's about making the right one, and Mars is about how you act on things. So this can be just difficult because there's like a lot of push and pull when it comes to this aspect. But of course, if you identify things like this in terms of challenges, it can be put to use in how you address certain challenges in your own relationship, and you can either work through them or decide that maybe it's too much to deal with. But hey, that's just something to note about in a synastry reading. Okay, so that was a synastry reading, and now we're going to go into a composite chart reading. You can see here that these are the major aspects that I've pulled together based on a composite chart reading, where you looked at the major midheaven points and the mathematical equations to interplay those charts. I could not actually find anyone who had put together I guess there's probably different flavors of composite chart readings, and so I haven't found one where it was based on the birth time of when Elvis and Priscilla were married, let's say, or when their relationship actually began. That would be something really interesting to look at. But for now, this is a composite chart reading based on the natal mathematical parts of the birth charts between the two to cast a whole new chart with whole new aspects. And you can see here with the sun, you've got it, the sun is opposing Neptune. The sun is also trine Pluto. We also have a lot of activity going on with the moon and Mercury. Venus is also trine Mars, which I think softens the blow a little bit of that synastry reading of the Marses being in opposition with each other, because the Venus of love can come in and soften that a little bit more, so that perhaps that tug of war can just end in making it up in the bedroom or something like that. Something a little bit more constructive, right? So for more magic, you can always contact us via email at kevinrachelz@protonmail.com, as well as on our website at sacredsomaalchemy.com. At our website, you can also book an astrology natal chart reading with myself, as well as a synastry reading for, yes, yourself and your potential crush, or yourself and a sibling. But if you want a specific love reading, you can specify that in ordering the synastry reading, because we can also perhaps include a composite chart reading. But I will have all of those details on the website. Check that out. Okay, Starseeds, I just wanted to thank you for joining me on this latest episode of Astrology Chats, where we talked all about love astrology and the difference between synastry and composite charts. I hope that you found this presentation informative and useful and can apply it to your incarnation, to your mission here on this plane of existence. If you want to know more, check us out on our website, as I mentioned, or you can leave us a comment. If you can think of any other couples you would like for us to do a little bit of a deep dive on, let us know that as well. Otherwise, have a beautiful evening, beautiful morning, beautiful time wherever you are. Until next time.